Nestor de Vincenti perished in the Argentine Dirty War.
Gatlauk Lual Dab perished in the South Sudan Civil War.
Malka Cherma perished in the Holocaust at the age of 37.
Karajel Nisenbaum perished in the Holocaust at the age of 18.
Tush Shimir Patrick perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Nelly Macedo perished in the Argentine Dirty War.
Avdil Imiraj perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 68.
Abdul Mafak Abdul Alal perished in the Syrian Civil War in 2012.
Uwam Horo perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Berth Faginman perished in the Holocaust at the age of 7.
Shalom Muhammad al-Zubayy perished in the Syrian Civil War in 2013.
Mukagahima Francine perished in the Rwandan genocide at the age of 35.
Kana Nura perished in the Rwandan genocide at the age of 32.
Betty Kissinger perished in the Holocaust at the age of 4.
Mehmet Bashnjaku perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 29.
Mayak Mabni Reek perished in the South Sudan Civil War.
Yusuf Berisha perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 31.
Jeka Draginha Alvahanha perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 70.
Haja Block perished in the Holocaust at the age of 10.
Hugh Bahiro perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Aleshbek Bihandil perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 16.
Ahmad Adas perished in the Syrian Civil War in 2013.
Mak Saran perished in the Cambodian genocide.
Klempik Muho perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 36.
Gashi Haki perished in the Kosovo War.
Leek Tilukai perished in the South Sudan Civil War.
Bruce Yahana perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Tameh Hamed al-Ghanim perished in the Syrian Civil War in 2015.
Bekim Zija perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 21.
Enver Batusha perished in the Kosovo War at the age of 22.
Shala Bashram perished in the Kosovo War.
Dura Goshman perished in the Holocaust at the age of 2.
Hasik Omer perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 56.
Ravika Finger perished in the Holocaust at the age of 30.
Hasanovich Desmail perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 56.
Ruginiaj Filiet perished in the Rwandan genocide at the age of 9.
Mario Humberto Mariani perished in the Argentine Dirty War.
Sam Zivitz perished in the Holocaust.
Hukik Seko perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 61.
Amsheh Shehan perished in the Syrian civil war in 2013.
Moon and Izia perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Frida Wall perished in the Holocaust.
Bashir Suleiman perished in the Darfur genocide at the age of 27.
Kazu Pwinge perished in the Rwandan genocide in 1994.
Ntizi Jinda Athanase perished in the Rwandan genocide at the age of 39.
Mohammed Yusuf Aziz perished in the Syrian civil war in 2014.
Rashed Hossein Fatih perished in the Syrian civil war in 2012.
Samjik Ismet perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 42.
Avit Sebman perished in the Bosnian genocide at the age of 59.
Giragos der Giragosian perished in the Armenian genocide.
Assad Suleiman perished in the Syrian civil war in 2014.
Nader Enebtawi perished in the Syrian civil war in 2014.
Now to read the names of my family members who perished in the Holocaust. Faiz Wegel, Sabnan Emmer, Chana Emmer, Hanik Emmer, Hirsch Emmer, Leah Emmer, Lipka Emmer, Malka Emmer, Menachem Emmer, Mina Emmer, Mordechai Emmer, Moshe Emmer, Sonia Emmer, Salka Emmer, Tonya Emmer, Zalman Emmer.
Everyone with the Together We Remember initiative for inviting me to send along this brief greeting as you launch your 2020 campaign. The fact that this launch is happening in conjunction with students, educators, and community leaders in Pittsburgh is particularly meaningful for me. I immigrated to the United States from Ireland at the age of 9, and Pittsburgh is where my family and I lived the first years of our new lives. Pittsburgh is where I became American. I was a young kid and desperately wanted to fit in right away, so after going to my new school for a few days, I quickly decided to outfit myself almost entirely with Pittsburgh Pirates t-shirts and a number 12 Terry Bradshaw Steelers jersey. I was very self-conscious of my thick Irish accent, so I made a particular point to start using words and phrases that I was told were unique to the Pittsburgh dialect, like yins and a few more that I think I shouldn't repeat here. To this day, I'm a fanatical baseball fan, and the reason is because I happened to move to Pittsburgh just in time to get caught up in the Pirates' magical 1979 World Series run. So Pittsburgh holds a deeply special place in my heart, and I was enormously inspired by the way the city came together in the aftermath of experiencing the worst anti-Semitic attack in the history of our country. From the indelible video of young men marching on Charlottesville to synagogue attacks in Pittsburgh and Southern California, and the rising incidences of anti-Semitism documented by groups like the ADL, Americans of all faiths and backgrounds have unfortunately been reminded why teaching new generations how to counter hatred and overcome divisions remains a vital mission. It is only fitting that Together We Remember is partnering with a city that showed such resilience in the face of hatred, and that resolved to use its grief to educate and motivate others in the movement against identity-based violence. This week, many Jews and non-Jews alike were planning to come together to celebrate Passover. But what is normally an occasion for a cross-generational gathering of family and friends is made difficult in a world of social distancing and quarantines. At the Seders I've attended, I've always appreciated the tradition of opening the door for Elijah, what friends have encouraged me to see as welcoming the stranger into our own lives. This too will be especially difficult for Passover this year. But our distance from each other is only temporary. I am so thankful to all of you for seeking to strengthen our communal bonds at a time when they very easily could be frayed. Because when this pandemic is over, and it will end, your activism and your solidarity will have to be stronger than the forces that would use this experience as an excuse to turn inward, to stigmatize the stranger, to claim that we can't possibly seek to help others when uncertainty prevails in our own lives. The world is facing the worst displacement crisis since the Second World War. More countries are experiencing some form of violent conflict today than at any other time during the last 3 decades. If you believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, as I know those of you watching do, then in fact there has never been a more urgent time to work together, to prevent atrocities and to assist those whose lives have been upended by displacement and war. David encouraged me to use this message to share a lesson that people might remember when the going gets tough. So my appeal to you is to never ever diminish the change you are able to make to affect individual lives. Never diminish the awareness you're able to raise through initiatives like Together We Remember. Never think of this campaign and this cause as addressing symptoms rather than causes. The symptoms of the world's refugee and displacement crises, for one example, are humans. The symptoms in the case of over half of all refugees today are children. The chief obstacle many of us face today may in fact be paralysis, just feeling overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges that confront us, feeling that anything we do will by definition be too little. So with that in mind, I'd like to close with a short story about why initiatives like yours are so important. Together We Remember is partnered with STAND, an organization working to prevent and end mass atrocities around the world. But STAND was founded back in 2004 to specifically focus on one mass atrocity, ending the genocide in Darfur. I had the great privilege of meeting many student leaders from STAND and to work with a number of them on anti-genocide activism. Despite the impactful work that STAND did, for years, many of us in the Save Darfur movement have wondered if our voices truly mattered, given the extent of the violence in Sudan and the impunity enjoyed by many of those directly responsible for the genocide. Well, last year, the Sudanese people heroically rose up against their authoritarian, genocidal dictator Omar al-Bashir. After many months of protest and collective action by ordinary Sudanese, a new leader took power, the reformist Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok. Bashir, who committed genocide against the people of Darfur, is now in jail. And the new Sudanese government says it is willing to have him appear before the International Criminal Court on the charges of genocide that many thought he would never face. On a recent visit to the United States, Prime Minister Hamdok also had a message for Americans who made their voices heard on what was happening in his country, and I quote him, "The campaign in the United States and elsewhere in the world created that momentum which helped our people inside the country to topple the dictatorship, Hamdok said. So he continued, the struggle here, the Darfur movement, Enough, Save Darfur, and all these efforts over the years which helped us to reach where we are now, we Sudan are very appreciative and we owe it to that effort, end quote. With this in mind, my message to all of you is quite simple. There is plenty each of us can do. What we can't do is nothing. Every effort to fight hate, every hand extended to a stranger in your community, every step taken to protect the most vulnerable among us, and every step to stand up to the perpetrators of atrocities, hate crimes, and human rights abuse, every step together, they can often mean much more than we can ever know in the moment. That was true of the Save Darfur movement, and it's true of the work you are doing today. And I thank you so much for it and for having me with you.
Greetings, everyone. It is an honor to welcome you to this program tonight. Recently, we received the recommendation to wear a face mask when we go out in public. So why wear a face mask now? It is not to protect yourself, it is to protect other people from you in case you are suffering from COVID-19. This metaphor fits so perfectly, in fact, too perfectly, with what we are doing today. We're coming together this late afternoon, and we're fighting two viruses. One is COVID-19, and we're also fighting the virus of hate. Just as the face mask I wear protects you from me, we all must recognize and commit to countering the hate that festers around us. I am Lauren Afterburn, father, director of the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh. The Holocaust Center connects the horrors of the Holocaust and anti-Semitism with injustices of today. Through education, the Holocaust Center empowers individuals to build a more civil and humane society. And right now, what that means is that we stay home. We stay home even though we're getting restless, and today was a perfect day to play basketball at the park. Today's program will include a panel conversation of leaders in the movement to prevent atrocities and to explain the persistence of hatred and polarization. At the end of the panel discussion, we will invite you to submit questions through the Q&A function. You'll be able to see that on your screens toward the bottom in the middle, so please take a look now where that is. We will go through the questions after the discussion, and some of them will be asked. I wish we had more time, but we'll do our best to ask as many questions as we can. In the beginning of this program, during the name reading, the student Chloe shared the names of her own family members who were killed in the Holocaust. We made the choice not to read the names of the 11 victims of the shooting at the Tree of Life building, October 27th of 2018. The 11 martyrs were members of 3 congregations, Tree of Life Or L'Simcha, Dor Hadash, and New Light, and they are with us every day. And I want to thank the members of those congregations who are participating right now. Please know that we grieve with you and that that horrific event was part of what inspired us to do this program today. This day, in fact, has been years in the making. We have pivoted from having an in-person summit, which was to be hosted graciously by the August Wilson African American Cultural Center here in downtown Pittsburgh. We quickly were able to make it into an online gathering, and rather than a summit involving people from throughout the Western Pennsylvania region, we now have people from across the country joining in this program and in this conversation. I am proud to have spent the better part of the last year working closely with David Estrin and with Together We Remember. And it is my pleasure to ask David to join me in this conversation. David.
Thank you so much, Lauren. Why am I here? This is a question that has been on my mind as far back as I can remember. And it's simply because all 4 of my grandparents survived the Holocaust. And for so long in my experience with my grandparents, the question why would come up. And it came often from my grandpa who survived Auschwitz and Mauthausen. Why was he the one who survived? Nonetheless, he did. And in my experiences, with my exposure to all these incredible stories of survival and resistance, I came to explore more deeply the question of why. And I know that I'm here today because, first of all, the hate that fueled the Holocaust to happen and other genocides that have happened in the first place. But second, also because my grandparents on my dad's side chose to rise up, and they were Jewish resistance fighters, and they survived for 3 years in the forest of Lithuania. I'm also here because Raoul Wallenberg saved my grandma Martha when she was a teenager by bribing Nazis and preventing thousands of Jews, including my grandma, from ending up on the trains that would have sent her to Auschwitz. And I'm also here because my grandpa survived through a incredibly miraculous combination of luck and grit and will, but he was also liberated by the men of the 11th Armored Division in the US Army. He was freed by the best generation. And then my grandparents all found their way to the United States and managed to find their way here because this country would welcome them, though it was only after the Holocaust that Jews were welcomed here in appropriate numbers. And finally, I'm here because I'm on a mission. I'm on a mission to make never again a reality by transforming remembrance into action. And I've witnessed firsthand the power of collective memory to inspire collective action. But in my experience in building the Together We Remember movement, I learned really quick that this wasn't my mission, but it was our mission. There are so many people around the world, especially those who've had experiences with genocide, mass atrocities, and other forms of identity-based violence, who share in this mission in the belief that never again can be made a reality. And so it's my honor to welcome Lauren back and a number of incredible individuals who are on the front lines of this fight against hate and who have incredible stories and who will open hearts and minds in an incredibly special way. Now, before I do that, though, briefly, I do want to share a little bit about how and why we do what we do. We have a 6-part methodology in all of our remembrance programs and vigils in which we've organized over 109 countries around the world since we were founded in 2012. First off, we convene unlikely allies, the folks who really need to be doing the work across lines of difference. Second, we use the arts and storytelling to open hearts and minds. Third, we learn about the past and how we can take action from the present. And the panel that you're about to hear is really about that step 3. 4, we create a new sense of belonging, a new identity through dialogue activities, and often name reading, which you heard at the beginning of this program. And then once we get to that step of 4, we might actually have trust across lines of difference. And it's until we have that trust, it's really difficult to move to 5 and 6. And 5 is practicing to take action towards making never again a reality. And finally, 6, if we get that far, this is one heck of a story, and we should be telling it to change the narrative on social media and in the media, traditional media itself. So we want to share that story, but we can't get to 5 and 6 until we've really created trust among us. And so our effort here today is one small step in that direction, and we're so, so grateful that you're here with us. So now I'll turn it back over to Lauren.
Thank you, David. It is my pleasure to introduce the members of our panel, and I'll remind you again, they will respond to questions from me, and then we'll end that discussion, and you'll all have a chance to put questions through the Q&A function, which you'll see at the bottom in the middle of your windows. If anyone currently has their microphones on and is not participating on the panel, if you would mute yourselves, that would improve the experience for everyone who's participating. And right now we have well over 100 people watching through the Zoom and even more people watching on Facebook. So thank you all. What a thrilling experience. And you know, when we can't be together, that we can still be together like this really means the world to me. And I know it does to my colleagues too. So on our panel, we have Dr. NICHOLE ARGO BEN-ITZHAK from Project Over Zero, Susan Bro from the Heather Heyer Foundation, Dr. David FREY from the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at West Point, and Dr. HEVAL KELLI, who is a cardiologist and one of our very brave healthcare workers on the front lines of fighting COVID-19, featured on CNN recently. We also have Emai ALAQUIVA, my dear friend and Pittsburgh legend, I'll say. We worked together on a very meaningful exhibit last fall, which I hope will have another life. So from there, I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourself. So Dr. Argo Ben-ITZHAK, please.
Thank you, Lauren, and thanks to you and David for having me here and putting this incredible initiative together. So this question, what brought me to the work that I do at Over Zero? My quick answer is that I'm a social psychologist. I study intergroup conflict and cooperation in the aftermath of conflict or amidst it. And I do that in laboratories with people hooked up to psychophysiological measures or in cross-national surveys, also in war zones and in communities rebuilding after war. But as a lot of people here probably know, research is often me-search, and the deeper answer is that I can't remember a time when I didn't study war. My father served in the Vietnam War, and he never really recovered. He had been a radial gunner, meaning that he was in a helicopter at the front lines shooting Vietnamese at close distance. He was deeply traumatized, like so many. And I think I was traumatized too as a really young child, thinking, well, how could he do that? How could he have done that? How did that feel for him? How did that feel for people who fought against him? Sometimes eye to eye. And I grew up thinking about the conditions, be they structural, social, or personal, under which normal, good people can get to a place of hating or harming others. In our academic speak, those are called outgroups. So doing a PhD to understand and counter those processes or to transform them seemed obvious to me. And then once I was in the PhD, not taking science to the field seemed crazy to me. So I ended up traveling to Rwanda and Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, Chiapas, India, and then quite by accident, Israel and the Palestinian territories. And in those places, I was able to explore violent extremism on both sides and study people who had been part of such movements, but then moved past them and sometimes were working together with others from the other side. So today I live in Boston and I'm the director of research and field advancement at Over Zero, which is a nonprofit that works to prevent or reduce identity-based conflict, violent conflict. And we advise or train communities and organizations who are designing and implementing and measuring initiatives to that end.
I did it again. I hope it's the only time, but I've become infamous in the world of Zoom meetings for constantly talking when I'm on mute. Thank you so much, and thank you for being with us today. The next person I can see on my screen is Susan Bro. So Susan, if you would talk to us about what brings you here to this conversation today.
I was a elementary school teacher in a rural area for many years, and believed strongly that I supported people in being fair and equitable, taught children to be fair and equitable. And as my daughter, Heather Heyer, became an adult, she was seeing things in a different light and was helping me to awaken myself to the fact that not only did racial issues very much exist and inequities around the world, but also that as a white person, I was quite complicit in this, and I benefited from being so. And it was hard sell for me. It was hard for me to understand, but I was beginning to understand that. And she walked with her friends in peaceful counter protest in Charlottesville, staying away from the violence that was happening that day. And nevertheless, after the rally, James Fields decided he did not like the looks of the crowd that she was with. He did not like the racial mix-up of the crowd, and so he drove his car into the crowd, killing my daughter and wounding a great many others. So my life took a major turn at that point, and I was receiving money that I didn't feel that the family should be having. I did not feel that the family needed to be hoarding this money. So we used the money to form the Heather Heyer Foundation only 9 days after she was killed, in order to create scholarships, originally only 2 scholarships for students who were already activists in social justice issues and nonviolent measures, and it has now expanded till we are giving out 8 this year. We gave out 8 last year. And we have so far given out over 12,000 in scholarships with the aim of supporting the education and empowerment of students who are already activists and advocates and allies. And other than that, you know, I really didn't see where I was going to be very effective. I've always had opinions, but nobody cared to hear them. And most of my life, when I would talk, people would say, you need to hush and sit down. You don't, that's above your pay grade. You need to stop talking about that. And so I would do that, reluctantly, resentfully, but I would sit down and hush. Once Heather died, because she was a white woman, suddenly the press was all agog to hear what her mother had to say. And I found that I had a platform suddenly that was not given to Black mothers, that was not given to Muslim mothers, it was not given to Asian mothers, but because my daughter was a white woman, I had a platform. And so I thought, well, that's not fair, but I will use it not only to promote what Heather was talking about, but also to lift up other mothers and other voices. And so that has become another aspect of what I'm doing. And my place in this as a white woman is to say, you need to stand up for atrocities you see happening to other people. You need to get your head out of the sand. You need to acknowledge your privilege and your position, but use them in a way that helps other people. Not coming in as a white savior, not coming in as someone who's taking charge and going to fix it for people, but asking, how can I help? What can I effectively do? Ironically, Charlottesville has so much going on that my voice has really not been needed much here. I mostly am speaking at other places. I'm mostly working in other places to help encourage people to step up and step out. And that's really the most effective thing I can do right now. That's sticking to my story and sticking to my experience and using it to empower and encourage others to do the same.
Susan, thank you so much for being with us. And I want to thank you for your leadership and your bravery. It is making a difference, and it just means the world to us that you are with us today. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
How about Emai Alaquivas? Emai, can you talk a little bit about what brings you to this conversation and the work that you are doing to elevate people?
Yes, hello everyone. How you doing? Yay.
Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. My name's Emai Alaquivas. I am a storyteller. I got into storytelling first through music, but when life kind of got in the way, I started to explore other branches of telling stories for sure. Relating to my family, when they moved from New York City, they moved to a section of Pittsburgh called the Hill District. And the Hill District was, predominantly, minority or immigrants. When they would come to the city of Pittsburgh, there were several sections that they can go to. And we had a very, very strong connection with the Jewish community from the simple fact that here in the Hill District, there was a large percentage of African Americans, large percentage of Jewish as well. And my grandmother was taught in a place called the Kaufman's Auditorium, which from my understanding was where the Jewish Community Center was first located in Pittsburgh. And even when you go through the Hill District, up and down the streets, you'll see, buildings and things in different languages. And that was just always striking to me, because there was always a parallel relationship between Jewish and African Americans that was very, very intimate, that I didn't necessarily understand until I got much older. Some of the parallel struggles and some of the parallel experiences that allow both cultures to be very resilient. So with this attraction, I got into the arts with music. Then I started to slowly get into filmmaking. Right now, I'm a film director in a lot of different genres, from documentary to television shows. And when I started to film, my camera that I had the option to take photos as well as filming. So I had the opportunity from Dr. Zippy Gur from Classrooms Without Borders to go on this trip. And this was a trip that I tried my very best to get out of the trip, and I tried to create excuse after excuse to not go to Auschwitz in Poland with Classrooms Without Borders, because I was sort of trapped into my own mind on how could I tell a Jewish story as an African American male. I don't need to be over there. And it terrified me. But all the way up to 10 days before we were supposed to fly over to Auschwitz, my wife said, listen, go and experience something totally different. Try to find a way to look through the adversity that will build your character based on the parallel differences that we have with Jewish people. And I said, all right, cool. All right, sure, no problem. I ran out of excuses. Fast forward, I got to Auschwitz, and it turned out to be one of the most transformative experiences in my entire life. And going there and experiencing things that were minor, like the word ghetto. Let's just start there. Growing up in African American culture, this word ghetto was tossed around as, oh, you ghetto, oh, you look ghetto, and da-da-da. And going over there and finding out, that this word ghetto was created in the 1600s, originally in Italy, to describe a population of Jewish people, and then to walk through Warsaw and see it in stone, Warsaw Ghetto in stone, and then finding out this information and being able to find the parallels between, Maya Angelou, and Dr. Martin Luther King, or the slave ship versus the trains that we were told to get on, and we're going to go to a beautiful place to change your life. And then I created a way where, how could I tell these stories through photography? So that's when I created Optic Voices. Optic Voices is an interactive photography exhibit that tackles social change. No, I'm not, I don't have 20,000 PhDs, but what I do have is I have a heart. I have a heart for the arts, and how can I use arts as a claymation to really shape what it is that people need to see. So when you think about the photography of Leon Ford, who was shot by Pittsburgh police 5 times, and you think of a survivor like Fanny, who is still alive and with us today, the trauma that Leon Ford has versus the trauma that sometimes Fanny has. As an artist, we have to recognize our responsibility in making sure that we bring these things together so that other individuals could digest the conversation that we need to have in order to change the narrative of our country.
Thank you so much. And I mentioned the Holocaust Center had an Optic Voices exhibit, and he's talking about a Holocaust survivor, Fanny Galanter, and they had a wonderful day together. And she may be listening, or her family. They're very involved with us. And the Optic Voices exhibit gave everyone who came, and that was many, many visitors, students, community members, et cetera, a chance to really reflect on the photographs and have their own true emotional responses, which we know is such an important piece in this kind of bridge building, healing work we're trying to do. I'd like to invite Dr. HEVAL Kelly to say a few words, and thank you for making time to be with us.
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone. My name is HEVAL Kelly, and if you could remember only one thing from my talk, my name is actually Kurdish, which means actually the word friend. So if you could remember my name, you probably could make a lot of Kurdish people happy by saying that to them. I'm a Kurd from Syria. The reason why I'm here today, there's an interconnected storyline. Basically, I'm a Kurd from Syria. We left Syria due to the political crisis in the early 90s. My father was harassed by the police and the government, was arrested. They tortured my mom and beat me up. So we left, we went to Turkey. And then from there, we went to refugee camps in Germany for 6 years until 2001. The German immigration system didn't accept us on our asylum, so we had to leave. So US was our next station that we applied for. Long story short, we got accepted to come to the US and 9/11 happened. And then we got a call saying you have 2 days to come to the US. So we arrived to Clarkston, Georgia, outside of Atlanta, 2 weeks after 9/11. You know, Syrian, I was 18 years old, you know, Muslim family from Syria, Kurds. My mom was wearing the hijab. We were very scared, but we were very welcomed by these Christian group from All Saints Episcopal Church when we came to the US. And that kind of like was the first encounter of what makes this country great and why I think the foundation of this country is actually one of the best in the world that accepts everyone and made us feel welcome. You know, when you come here as a refugee, you have to work, and especially if you're one who could be able to work, you support your family. So I worked as an 18 years old, washed dishes, going to high school. And eventually we have a new baby, so I'm sorry for the background noise. So we eventually, like, you know, work as a dishwasher, you know, going from high school to college, you know, I went to Georgia State, then Morehouse Medical School and Emory residency for training in 2012. And the restaurant I used to wash dishes for 5 years is literally across from the hospital where I train right now as a cardiologist. So in June, I'm going to finish my training in heart medicine. And with the election of President Trump, you know, when this whole anti-immigration, anti-refugee was given rise to, I was wondering why this is happening. You know, post 9/11, I didn't see much of it. Something else is cooking in our country that we probably ignored for a while. So I started reaching out to a lot of his supporters and trying to figure out, understand where they're coming from. And then I was like, okay, well, you know, not everyone who supports him has something against refugees. So let me work with the people who actually do hate refugees and Muslim. So I reached out to someone through Honors Michaelis. He introduced me to a guy. He's like, oh, you want to make a difference? How about you meet this guy who's a KKK member and he's your age? I was like, well, you know, that's a challenging case. I wanted to start easy. So he happened to be 2 hours from us. I went to meet him. Eventually, I invited him to have the Ramadan with us. He came with his family. He left the KKK, and now actually he's becoming a big advocate of addressing hate in the United States. And he's working for Parent for Peace to develop an innovative program to help people to leave, you know, racism and hate through his experience, because he was a drug addict, a veteran, and he was like, you know, going through all the experience, how he joined the KKK. So while I'm addressing heart disease on the front line, I'm trying to also fix the heart of this country and bring it back to where we actually used to be, where we're able to welcome a Muslim family right after 9/11 without causing any harm or any hate.
Thank you so much. I'm glad you could be with us. I know that you're active in battling COVID-19, so thank you for making time to be in this conversation.
Oh, my pleasure.
While you're doing that work, and more on that in a little bit, but Dr. David Frey is here from West Point, and we've had a couple of comments that get at the global picture of atrocity prevention while we're also working on issues closer to home. And Dr. Frey was to come here last summer. It will happen eventually, I hope, but please, if you would tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you very much, Lauren and David, and everyone else involved in organizing this. Thank you very much for persevering. It's an honor to be here with you all today, and an honor to be among such a wonderful and courageous group of panelists, even as we commemorate some of the awful events of the more distant past as well as the recent past, from the mass murders of the Tree of Life synagogue shooting and Susan, your daughter. When I speak in public, I always have to start with a disclaimer. This is what the government requires, that my opinions are mine alone. They're not the opinions of West Point, the Army, or the US government. That said, I am the founding director of the Center for Holocaust and Genocide Studies at West Point. Its mission is to serve not just West Point, but all of the service academies, all levels of the professional military education within the armed forces, and the entire Armed Forces and Department of Defense to better educate the armed services about the scourge of mass atrocities and how to inspire future leaders to think creatively about prevention. Now, my story is one where I did my PhD in Central European history, and so I did a little bit of study of the Holocaust and other genocides in graduate school. And soon after arriving at West Point, in the depths of the war in Iraq, I realized that we at the military academies and other service academies were not doing enough to prepare our officers for the types of conflicts they were facing and will face. For me, it's relatively simple. You can't study and prepare individuals for war and to effectively bring about peace if you don't devote substantial attention to mass atrocity crimes and their long histories. Nearly 85% of what we call mass atrocities occur in ongoing conflict, particularly the worst of these crimes, genocide. We also know that societies that experience genocide are much more likely to experience it again. We know that genocides are not only the most destructive forms of conflict, but that they virtually always metastasize and become international, thus impacting the security of people everywhere. And these are just a few of the reasons why the armed forces needs to think deeply and critically about genocides and mass atrocities, and why I ended up in this field. What I realized back in 2008 was that the armed forces needed to do more than just think about these issues. The Department of Defense was and is the single most important organization in the world when it comes to these problems. The armed forces number around 3.5 million people. That includes active duty, reserve, and civilians like me. Thus, it's the largest employer in the United States and has capabilities no other organization has. And it's often the first agency asked to respond to atrocity, and it can use these unparalleled abilities to predict, monitor, mitigate, and educate. Its future leaders need to learn to use these tools to make war less likely and to help create conditions where peace and justice have a chance. So briefly, what do? I run a center that supports courses, research, travel, scholarship, and I've helped stand up a diversity and inclusion minor at West Point. My center's courses allow cadets to do multidisciplinary study of the Holocaust, genocide, and identity formation through history, including America's own, and to develop practical tools the armed forces can use so that leaders better understand and can work with countries at risk. I bring speakers, exhibits, and films to West Point, from President Clinton to Ben Ferentz, from exhibits on Nazi book burning to art made by Holocaust victims. I take cadets around the world to study not just the harms and trauma of genocide, but the processes of transitional justice, reconciliation, and recovery. I've taken cadets to Bosnia and Auschwitz, sent them to Cambodia, The Hague, Rwanda, Israel, and throughout Europe. I and my growing staff of postdoctoral fellows produce scholarship, particularly scholarship that fills the military niche, such as case studies of the character and leadership of Lieutenant General Romeo Dallaire during the Rwandan genocide and the behavior of ordinary German soldiers during the Holocaust, as well as broad studies of white nationalism in and targeting the armed forces, which Heval just mentioned. We've helped other academies and Defense Department schools develop new courses on genocide, war crimes, and atrocity prevention. We run workshops and conferences for students and faculty that mix research and action, connecting policymakers and activists as well as scholars. And we work with other elements of the US government as well as scholarly and institutional partners around the world to better understand, predict, and educate about genocides and mass atrocities and their prevention. And it's a good note to end on in our introductions. My work is to inspire individuals to internalize the mantra of never again.
Thank you so much. And indeed, that is the perfect note for you to end on for your introduction. We have a very powerful, wonderful group of people in this discussion, and we probably could talk for about 3 hours. So I'm going to skip ahead to the very meat of this conversation, which is about never again. We called this event, What Does Never Again Mean to You? And we have asked each panelist. So if you could, let's go back around to everyone. tell us what Never Again means to you and how you think it could be made a reality, if indeed you think it can be made a reality. So we'll go back to NICHOLE ARGO BEN-ITZHAK, please.
All right, thanks. So probably not surprising based off of my introduction, where I extolled the virtues of science and understanding us versus them. To me, Never Again has meant and continues to mean understanding the human and group psychology of us versus them. So that is what is creating and exacerbating identity-based divisions. And how do we identify those processes long before group-targeted harm can begin? And then how do we prevent or transform identity-based hate in ways that are productive for groups and for society as a whole? The answers are not always obvious. For instance, it can be easy to think sometimes when you watch the news that today's polarization in the United States is about unbridgeable differences on issues rather than fairly recent demographic or identity-based changes in politics. But the fact is that toxic polarization is about identity and not issues. And that brings us into the realm of group dynamics rather than individual ones or individual values, et cetera. So the ways that we intervene in divisions that are about issues are different than the ways that we intervene in identity-based divisions that are us versus them. And I'm really passionate about science because it usefully suggests some real and sometimes counterintuitive tactics for preventing dehumanizing spirals that can lead to atrocity or group-targeted harm. And some of those really well-known possibilities are pretty powerful, like efforts to help to recognize and bring to the fore commonalities between different groups, or fostering cross-cutting identities within individuals, or shifting within group norms that are more inclusive and respectful of other people and other groups, even when they're different. So what does Never Again mean to me now? Here right now in this polarized American moment, when large numbers of the public, I think, find the political landscape alienating and prefer to step back from it when they hear hate or moralizing rhetoric, I think it means now that we can't do that. So research shows us that such rhetoric doesn't just influence the fringes, it even influences moderate or inclusive people who feel like it doesn't belong anywhere near them, right? We know that it shifts their own perceptions of what norms are, what's okay, and that over time it can shift their attitudes about the target groups and even lead to similar behaviors in them. So we know that silence in those instances is harmful, because then people just hear the one message and think that's the norm. But if we speak up and people hear dissent in such rhetoric, then they understand that there are still fighting forces of moderation. So I think Never Again to me today in our society means all of us recognizing the immense power that we hold to represent inclusion and respect and valuing of others, and to set those norms and hold back the darkness that leads to the spiral.
Thank you so much. And I'm struck by, in your response, how it connects so closely with what we learned from the Holocaust about the silence of the bystanders and how silence was complicity. So thank you so much. Susan Bro, please.
Well,
please.
Go ahead. I was going to say that's a tough one to follow. We could call that a wrap and we'd be done. For me, it's very much about avoiding the us versus them, and that's hard to do when you have strong opinions about things. I'm very opinionated, have always been very opinionated, but I think that we have to recognize that as long as there is injustice, as long as there is inequity, as long as there are gaps in education, gaps in income, gaps in even the ability to have food and water for anyone, there are going to be us versus them. And so for me, the way to get at the heart of the matter to avoid these polarizations and these divisions is to truly reach out and try to make the world a better place for everyone so that we have less of this. Now, there are always going to be people who are fearful of that. There are always going to be people who are insecure when you come after their power structures. But I think that as we bring other people in the same way that our other panelists talked about how being at Auschwitz and being at the ghettos was a powerful experience, so many of us don't get out of our comfort zone to see what the rest of the world is living like, to see what the rest of the world is having to cope with. And so it's very easy for us to set up a mindset of, I can't let you have anything because you're going to take it away from me, not realizing how much we truly have in this country. So from a very practical standpoint, for me, that's one way to tackle it, is to avoid the us versus them by let's getting a better notion of what the them actually is comprised of. I know that grammar was terrible, but you get the message. Once we get to know one another, once we truly understand our commonalities, once we begin to see how much alike we truly are, we start to mitigate the us versus them mentality. And that is the only way to avoid these atrocities. It's only by viewing others as less than human, less than ourselves, that these atrocities can be committed. So we've got to stop it there.
Thank you so much. And I think that leads well into Emai. If you would let us know what you think about Never Again.
Again, for me, means a lot of things. And hold on, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Never again, for my family's sake, will it take 40 plus years for me to understand or to be educated about the Holocaust. This educational system, how partitioned it is and things of that nature, it was mind-blowing to learn about this, you know, decades while being on Earth. And then going into research, even preparing for the trip to Auschwitz, watching videos on how the Nazis actually established a television production company to create videos to then show the rest of the world, like, hey, listen, it's all love here. It's incredible. We're not doing anything foul. Hey, we're cool, right? And then to understand how they strategically set things up and how they set up things for people to do in these films was mind-blowing. And as a film director, you could already understand the gold nuggets in the light bulbs and the atoms that were breaking inside of my head, finding this out. And then again, paralleling that to my people's own experience, you know, and you know what we went through for that, you know, and I often say to myself, you know, never again can this happen. Can a whole entire system put together these you know, these narratives and this propaganda so that you could take what they give you versus what you deserve to have. And as it relates to never again in a modern sense, is that, you know, with the political climate, I'm not going to say any names, I'm not going to dive deep in things of that nature, but wow, if America does not see what is going on our television screens and you know, through social media, the fear, you know, the propaganda that is shaping us and orbiting us today with our political leadership, wow, never again can we allow this to happen. So we have to take steps each day to make sure that this never happens again. And whatever it is that we need to do, whatever bridges we need to build, let's not just build the bridges. we got to start crossing them and stop looking at each other from shore to shore. Hey, how you doing? Oh, okay, all right, I see you. Hey, screaming and hollering. The more we walk over that bridge and the more hands we start to interlink, the more we will be able to have what we need so that things like this never happen again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Kelly.
Yes, I think for me, never again, it comes personal also, from a general perspective. I came from a privileged background in Syria, and we had to leave everything behind because of reasons that didn't belong to us. And then when we came to Germany, we couldn't stay in the country and we had to leave again. And then now, in the US, I experienced that type of fear of like there's a prejudice toward immigrants and refugees for no clear reason. But also when I start hearing people saying, oh, we don't want Syrian refugee in this country again, we don't want any refugee. And I'm like, well, I was that refugee who came after 9/11. So that's what never again means to me. Like, what can I do as now a privileged former refugee with education and also resources to be able to, fight this prejudice and this issue? Can I just be under the shadow, do my job, be Dr. such and such, be protected, and I'll be fine. I'll be living in a nice neighborhood, and if anyone messes with me, like, I have exposure, access to legal, but that's not how I should live, because I was that one kid that could never become who I am today. So I need to be advocating. And that's why I start standing up and telling people, this is what a face of a refugee and immigrant look like. This is what I don't want in this country. I'm taking care of you. I'm about to write a prescription for you that has a side effect that might hurt you, but you still trust me. So how come you don't trust those refugees and immigrants coming to this country? So that's what never again is more using my personal experience, use my professional and my platform, educational and professional background to advocate and show people that we need to look in exactly what we're trying to like oppose and why we're opposing it. Because when people say we don't want no refugees here, and then they come say, hi, Dr. Kelly, how you doing? They don't put those two things together, that I am this person, they don't want to be here. And I tell them, how you think it makes me feel like if you don't want people like my kind to be here when I was the same people 18 years ago?
That's very powerful. And I mean, it helps us all to hear that. What I'm hearing across every response, and each response has been different, is this theme of individual responsibility. And that each person can make a choice to, as Father Patrick Dubois told us when he was here in 2016, act at our level, that each of us can act at our level. So Dr. David FREY, what is never again to you, and how do we get there?
Wow, how do we get there? That's a
a
tough one. I'll start with the what that never again is to me it's a mantra, it's an inspiration, and it's an aspiration. Thus, it holds a range of meanings. First, of course, it means remembering victims and honoring them. Second, it means standing up to the discrimination, prejudice, and inequality that so many of my co-panelists have already spoken about, and in all cases, we need to stand up. Third, and this is where I'll be a little bit different, it means understanding perpetrators so that we can stop them from acting. Fourth, it means investing in prevention and understanding we must be willing to sacrifice for that cause. And fifth, as an aspiration, it will always be out of reach, and thus never again signifies the kind of a constant and unrelenting challenge from which we can't back down. So those last two elements are why never again means more to me now that I'm teaching at West Point than it did before I came to work here. I feel like there's no more important place that this mantra be repeated than among my students. They're going to be asked to put never again into practice. As future Army officers, they have something the American people do not hand out lightly, the monopoly on violence. Thus, they must be the restraints, the moral beacons who ensure that that trust is not violated, that atrocity does not happen in our name and by our own people. Additionally, they'll be the ones on the front lines. They'll be the first asked to sacrifice should we choose military intervention to mitigate or stop atrocities. So what Never Again does not mean is moral simplicity. It means that it is incumbent on every one of us to understand what Nicole mentioned, as well as some of the many other long-term causes and short-term triggers of genocides and mass atrocities. We have to remember that mass atrocities are often simply aggregation of unchecked individual atrocities and of too many people paralyzed by inaction to stop them. It requires then that we invest in prevention and conflict reduction if we are to have any hope of reaching this aspirational goal. And I think, rather than me trying to sum it up, I think Ambassador Power said it best. Never Again is a reminder that what we can't do is nothing.
Thank you. So I have one more question for the panelists, and I'm watching to see if the hundreds of you who are watching this have any questions for the panel. So I'll remind you that there's that Q&A function that you'll see down at the bottom of your window in the middle. It says Q&A and it looks like file folders. If you have any questions, please submit them and we'll do our best to get to them. We have a little bit more time, so I'll just go ahead and take a question now since we don't have any questions from the other participants. But in conclusion, I want to give each of you a chance to tell us one thing that you would like our audience to take away with them, and please, if you can, incorporate something about how they can take action. Okay, so we'll go in the reverse order. We'll start with Dr. Frey.
Sorry, unmuting myself. So one of the things that I think is most important is that people should make a difference, but they shouldn't be paralyzed by thinking they can't make all of the difference. That change is hard, it's frustrating, it's slow, but it's made incrementally. And if you don't actually make those small steps, you're never going to achieve the major goals. And so one of the things I hope that people take from this is the inspiration and empowerment to take action and to be willing to take risks, to realize that they are going to run up against obstacles, to not be dissuaded by people saying no or people refusing to understand them, that those are part and parcel of making change, and have the perseverance and take examples from the past of the people who we do study, the resistors, the survivors, the liberators. Those are the rescuers. Those are the people who can provide that inspiration of what you need. And the people, the many others on this panel, these are the people I take as inspiration for why I need to continue to stand up and do the right thing.
Thank you for that. I'm going to interrupt myself because we do have a question, and this one is a really good one for Dr. Argo Ben-ITZHAK, if I may. What are your recommendations for mitigating polarity to have hard conversations in our communities?
Well, first, I guess I should afterwards we have a report that is somewhat based on this, where we talk about polarization as a major risk factor for group targeted harm and ways that we can attempt to deal with that. So we have several recommendations. One of the strongest, and the one that I would focus on the most here, is something you don't hear about a lot. So I think that we hear a lot about bridge building, and it is very important. And there are a lot of ways to go about that, and it's much more complicated than often talked about. But one of the things that we want to highlight is that there's a great deal of work that needs to happen within in-groups, right? So it's not just about bringing people who are different to a table and having them talk. It's also about us going back to our own networks and modeling behavior of respect and inclusion. And that also means policing behavior that goes too far, right? So we hear an awful lot, and I think there is a great deal of very good effort going on to build bridges, and it needs to happen. But there is a corollary. That bridge building ends with the people at the table unless there is equal amounts of work happening within our organizations and within our groups. And that may be with informal leaders at our kitchen tables, in our neighborhoods and at our homes. It can be in schools, it can be on media, it can be, one thing that we are investing a lot in as an organization right now is helping people think through how to build resilient communities. And that begins with, but goes much further than rapid response. So we know that to be resilient to violence, but also pandemics or economic downturns, or you name it, it requires cross-cutting ties and leadership within groups that supports cross-cutting ties. And it requires past experiences of success and of working together and of trust. So those are all things that we can do right now. We don't need an emergency incident of hate or of COVID-19 even. That's stuff we can build right now. We can do it online. It's talking about who we are as communities amidst our differences and what we want for the lives of the people in our communities and how we come together when we face adversity and being ready. Once you build that relational infrastructure, and a lot of that happens within groups, modeling within groups, we can be ready for any adversity. Is that somewhat?
That's so helpful, and we look forward to continuing that conversation with you and with your organization in the future. I mean, as you know, Pittsburgh really prides itself on being stronger than hate, and we have work left to be done, and you'll be an important partner in that effort. So thank you very much. Dr. Kelly, concluding thoughts for the people who are listening, and maybe in a few sentences. Sorry to do that. We're going to run out of time.
Yes, thank you. I think humanize the story. That's the most powerful way to change mind. I think, I tell people if data and fact works, all my patients will be skinny and healthy. The way I tell them, the best way to convince someone is to tell a personal story of someone who overcame a disease and got better. And I think the same way we could apply it to change people's mind when it comes to hate and prejudice, because it's very hard to hate something that you know. And that's, I think, very important to humanize the story. And that's the key anyone could do here and take home message from my end. But thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
Lauren, I love how just at the last moment when we just have a minute or two left, all these questions are pouring in, and they are amazing, amazing questions. But I don't want to take time from others' concluding thoughts. But heads up just to everyone, we will document these questions, and we will definitely try to get answers in subsequent programs that we organize.
Oh yeah, these are really good questions, but it also reminds me, I was going to mention it in a minute, but I'll do it now, that we've asked all of the panelists to come back and have longer conversations with us. I hope we'll get that together during the month of April, because we knew going in that there's so much that's so rich to talk about. We don't have time to do it. It's the way that it is, but I don't want to conclude without giving Emai Alaquiva and Susan Bro each a chance to tell us their concluding thoughts. Emai? Is he still there?
Sorry. All right, here we go.
Concluding thoughts.
Yeah, so my concluding thoughts is we have to, what we get lost in is what we get love out of. So I encourage everyone is to find what they get lost in so that we can get love out of that to create new conversations that will take us to the next level. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. And Susan, if you would, your concluding thought.
So don't think that because your actions are small, they don't matter. The smallest action can have the biggest consequence. All my daughter did that day was walk. She walked with her friends in support, and yet her impact was felt worldwide. You don't know the consequences of your actions. I often liken what I do is to tossing out a pebble to make a ripple. But if we're all making ripples with the intentionality of making a positive difference, those ripples can form a wave. And if we form a wave, we can certainly form a tsunami of change. Speak up, speak out, stand up, stand out.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I want to thank all of our panelists. I am reluctant to cut this off, but it is time to do that. Like I said, we will reconnect with each of the panelists. More coming later in this month to be determined and to be scheduled, but I am so moved by hearing all of your thoughts and really thinking about the power of what we do together. And I'm so moved. Thank you all. So I want to encourage you on that note about things that are going to happen in the future to watch the Together We Remember website, which is togetherweremember.org. There will be scheduled follow-up conversations, and there is programming throughout the month. You'll hear more about that. This program, the program that you're watching now, was meant to be a day-long program at the August Wilson Center, which I mentioned. And part of that was to be a community action lab, which was to include local nonprofits leading the effort to fight against racism and injustice. They included the City of Pittsburgh's Mayor's Office, Classrooms Without Borders. You heard a little bit about that organization from EMMAI. Repair the World, Film Pittsburgh and its excellent program for schools, Teen Screen, the World Affairs Council, the Global Switchboard, the 1027 Healing Partnership, which is the resiliency center that is now in Pittsburgh following the attack on the Tree of Life building. We have the Pittsburgh Commission on Human Relations, the FREY Pittsburgh, the Center of Life in Hazelwood, and of course the Tree of Life Congregation. These organizations are very close with the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh, and we will continue to work together and talk about making a Pittsburgh that really is stronger than hate, and also being a model for the country about what a place can accomplish through this relationship building that Dr. Argo Ben-ITZHAK described so beautifully. We also are part of a coalition across the country. It's the Together We Remember Coalition of Holocaust and Human Rights Museums. And I know on this call we have representatives from museums in Skokie, Los Angeles, Terre Haute, Indiana, Dallas, and others. And I welcome all of you to this program. Just wonderful relationships across the country. Many of them have grown up around the Association of Holocaust Organizations, and I'm so happy to be part of this really wonderful and supportive community. We are also lucky to work closely with Nick Haberman, who was a former Holocaust Educator of the Year and is founder of the LIGHT Education Initiative. LIGHT is Leadership Through Innovation in Genocide and Human Rights Teaching. It's a movement that embeds Holocaust, genocide, and human rights education in schools. So it might have been that the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh had one program at a school, or those students came to see the Holocaust Center one time. Now, instead of that, there is a lasting daily impact of this kind of education in the school. It changes the school environment. It changes the community. So Nick's students worked with state representatives in the community where they are, which is in Shaler, north of the city of Pittsburgh. Two state representatives, Sarah Innamorato and Lori Mizgorski, supported a proclamation to make April Genocide Awareness Month in the state of Pennsylvania. This happened because of the work of a number of students, some of whom participated in the name reading earlier this evening in this program. I have their names here, I'm going to read them. Cassidy Laffey, Destiny Morgano, Emily Merslack, James Angle, James Templin, Jason Grieco, Cameron Nash, Max Robinson, Molly Rutkowski, and Riley Pegher. This is a student-led program inside a school, and I'm so happy to have all of you be a part of this incredible thing. Students are shaping the future for us, and they give me more hope than anything that we're going to accomplish as adults. So thank you, all of you. You've heard that the Holocaust Center of Pittsburgh's connection to students and teachers is at the center of everything that we do. Next, we would like to share footage from the Together We Remember program that was held at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, a program that had been planned before the shooting there and was held around the 1-year anniversary. Ivy Seamus, who was on this call, was formerly the Holocaust educator at the school. She invited me to visit her classes, and it was incredible. She's also a survivor of the shooting there and a dear friend to both David and me. She's going to join us after the clip that David is about to play.
Together we remember Olivia Engel, who lost her life in the Sandy Hook shooting.
Together we remember Martin Richard. He was one of the youngest victims of the Boston bombing.
Together we remember Rachel Scott, who was killed at Columbine High School.
Together we remember Leopold Sosha, a Holocaust epicenter.
Together we remember Aaron Feiss, a victim of the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting.
We remember Hamza Mustafa, a victim of the attacks on High Street.
Together we remember Trevor Martin, a victim of gun violence.
Together we remember Cecil and David Rosenthal, brothers who were killed at the Tree of Life Synagogue.
Together we remember Anne Frank, a victim of the Holocaust who inspired millions with her words.
Together we remember Joseph, a Tutsi survivor who lost 37 members in the Rwandan genocide.
Together we remember Joaquin Oliver, killed at the Stoneman Douglas school shooting, to keep the conversation of violence alive and to work to find peace.
The rising of the sun and its going down, we remember them. At the blowing of the wind and the chill of the winter, we remember them. At the opening of the buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them. At the business of the skies and in the warmth of the summer, we remember them. At the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them. At the beginning of the year and when it ends, we remember them. As long as we live, they live too, for they are now a part of us as we remember them. When we are weary and in need of strength, we remember them. When we are lost and sick at heart, we remember them. When we have joy we crave to share, we remember them. When we have decisions that are difficult to make, we remember them. When we have achievements that are based on theirs, we remember them. As long as I've lived, they will live too, for they are now a part of us and we remember them.
Especially younger folks. When I'm sharing my story, it's not a crazy genocide that happened in really crazy African people. It's a humanity crisis. If it can happen to Rwanda, it can happen to anywhere. Maybe not from Hutu and Tutsi, but from other kinds of difference.
Right, and actually, when you leave this class, you see a poster on the wall over there. Elie Wiesel said that when you listen to a witness, you become a witness. So we all just heard you, and now it's our responsibility to tell others about your story.
Ivy, we would love to welcome you to join us and share just some reflections on your experience working together at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School, and to connect the dots between all of the folks on the line here today, because so many of us have connected and collaborated over the last year or so. Ivy, are you with us? Can you hear us?
I am. I'm right here. I just don't see. I was my face was clicked off, so the host has to put me back on.
We are working on it.
Okay.
Well, we hear you, so feel free to start speaking, and we might be able to get your video back.
That was remarkable. That day really changed our life. It had such a profound effect on myself and my students. That was my classroom not that long ago.
And Ivy, I know that you have really built a relationship with a lot of people in Pittsburgh, and I think we consider you an honorary Pittsburgher. We're hoping that you would move here. I'm speaking for myself. But can you reflect a little bit on the kind of community that grows up between cities that have experienced these horrific acts? And I mean, it certainly made us close, and I'm so grateful for the friendship.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you. We just can't see you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Okay. Regardless, I mean, it profoundly changed the lives of my students having Together We Remember, and you as well, Lauren, into my class. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, now we see you.
Okay. I'm sorry that I ended up taking time for no reason, but I'm just piggybacking on what some of you said. I mean, Dr. Frey just repeated or echoed what Ambassador Samantha Power said. What we can't do is nothing. And what we've done in our classroom teaching Holocaust, and it just happens to be ironic that we were learning how to be upstanders the day that the shooter came into our classroom on February 14th, 2018. 2 students were killed inside my classroom, and here they are learning about not hating. And what Dr. Kelly said, it's hard to hate something that you know. And that's what we've been trying to get the message across this whole time, is how to open up your heart to others and let them feel good feelings. And so this never again, I know it's very disheartening when it keeps happening again, but we can't stop. And so I think the message is there to try to make these students, if we start them young, and then throughout their life, teach them, just like Heather Heyer, to become an upstander instead of just a bystander.
Thank you so much, Ivy. I have to say, I mean, I grew up in Boca Raton, not too far away from Stoneman Douglas, and what happened really hit home for me, but it's been so inspiring to work with you. Similar to how we find strength from survivors of genocide and mass atrocities, I think right now it's so important for us to find strength from survivors of atrocities that have happened here in the United States, and think about how powerful it would be if we could unite our communities before atrocities have to happen, right? What if we host the vigil before we need the vigil? And that's very much why we do what we do, and why it was so special for us to be able to connect Pittsburgh and Charlottesville. Susan and I worked together 2 years ago on a vigil in Charlottesville with community leaders, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas, and the list goes on. I'm here in Baltimore. And this is just the beginning of this work of uniting people who are closest to the pain and turning that into a force for good. There's so much power left power to tap in that. So thank you so much, Ivy, for joining us and sharing some of your thoughts. At this point, I'd love to transition to a bit of the dialogue portion with some of the time that we have left today. I'm just going to pull up some prompts that may help us do that. Just give me a moment. This is the part where the technology is less cooperative. Anyways, I'll go ahead and start explaining it as I try to pull it up. So what we would love to do is invite you to share your who, what, why, and how you pledge to remember genocide and mass atrocities, whether it's the victims, the upstanders, their stories, your story. And so for the next minute or two, what I'd love to invite you to do as I play a song is to reflect. You might have a piece of paper in front of you. Some of you may have already printed out your Together Remember pledge card, and write down together we remember ... and share who, what, why, or how you pledge to turn remembrance into action. And there is no right answer to this. We've done this exercise in communities all across the world, and every single time it is absolutely inspiring. So what I'm going to do is play a song. I'll try to get up the slide that I was trying to share before, and then in a few minutes we'll get back together, and some of the students on the line have some pledges to share with us. So go ahead and get started.
We could be the reason to find the strength to carry on. In a world that's so divided, we shall overcome. We can be the healing. We can be the flower in the gun. We can be the healing. We can be the flower in the gun. What could I say to my son or to my daughter if they came and asked me about these days? What kind of reason could I give for all the hate that's standing in the way? Wish I could tell them that nobody's gonna judge them, that every stranger on the block is gonna love them. No bully in the world could ever hurt them, but I can't say that today. No one could ever take your pride from you. Speak your truth and let your spirit fly. 'Cause we can be the hero when you're feeling all alone. We can be the reason to find strength to carry on. In the blood so divided, we shall overcome. We can be the hero. We can be the flower in the gun. We can be the healing. We can be the flower in the gun. What could I say to everyone?
So in the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and get us started with some of the dialogue portion, but please go ahead if you still are sharing who, what, why, or how you pledge to remember. Please go ahead and keep sharing your pledge. And as we're speaking now, and even after the call, I encourage you to go onto social media and share your pledge. Feel free to take a photo with it, to share a video of you sharing your pledge. And if you share the hashtag Together We Remember with it, especially on Twitter and Instagram, those pledges will live on in our virtual memorial in our website forever. And at some point, when we hopefully reach a world in which never again is reality, we will know it is in part because of the small acts of change that we took right now in this moment, and then inspired, similar to those pebbles that Susan was referring to, that we are all casting out together at a time that our world needs this very, very much. So at this moment, I'd love to invite some of the students that are with us to share their pledges. Doreen, are you here with us?
Yes.
Awesome. Doreen, would you like to share your pledge? Please go ahead.
Of course. And I actually wrote this pledge when David came to lecture at my school, and it was really important and powerful because, especially in Terre Haute, Indiana, we're extremely racially segregated and politically divided, and it's really powerful to see students as young as me put aside their personal agendas to see that it's a lot bigger than they are. So I pledge to turn remembrance into action, to recognize victims of identity-based violence and learn from older generations' mistakes. I'll inform my peers and my community and do my best to spread awareness for the Together We Remember movement to make Never Again a reality. I'll fuel my work with opportunity and justice. I've been given the opportunity to enrich my reservoir of knowledge and enhance my thirst to use my intellect to take action and demand change. As an African American young woman, I want to live in a world where access to the conduits of pursuing justice are available to all, and I pledge to be a catalyst for that vision. I've aligned myself with Together We Remember, my fellow young people, South Stand Club, and experienced activists, and others who take injustice personally. I'm happy to pledge my youthful energy to this pursuit.
Wow, thank you so much. I'm so proud that you're here and that a number of members of the Stand Club at Terre Haute South High School are here, because you heard Ambassador Samantha Power talk about how Stand was part of the Never Again movement, the Save Darfur movement back in 2004. And here we are years later, and you are part of that next generation. And we've got some other folks from Stand Club here today as well. Charlotte, are you here with us? Could you share your pledge?
I am. So this is one I just wrote today because Never Again means a lot of different things to me, and it's constantly really changing for me in relation to the work I do. So I said, together we remember my friends and family who have to live in fear of identity-based violence in their everyday lives, but still stand up against hatred. And I pledge to turn my remembrance into action by continuing to use my passion to spark my advocacy.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Charlotte. And I should also plug that Charlotte has started our Youth Action Coalition. And if you are a young person, or if you're just youthful in general, you are welcome to be a part of it. We do not discriminate against generation. We need this to be an intergenerational movement. But if you go to togetherremember.org and under Get Involved, you can learn more about the coalition that is being spearheaded by young people, but certainly welcomes everyone. Cassidy, would you like to share your pledge?
Hi. Together we remember nameless victims of the mass murders in the Holocaust by not forgetting their story and spreading their word to as many people as we possibly can.
Amazing. Thank you. And Savannah, I know you're with us, right? Would you like to share?
Yes, sorry, I had to unmute myself. I want to remember my aunt, Diane Janita. She didn't pass away, but she lived through the Holocaust and had to personally hide and run from Nazis into the woods as they raided her house in Poland as a child. And even though she doesn't like to talk about it, and most of my family members don't even know that she experienced this event and experienced it firsthand, I think it's important for me to remember and to tell my other family members what she went through and to kind of keep her story alive, as to not forget that it impacts people that are so close to me in my heart, and that it impacts us all infinitely and indefinitely. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. And I also want to acknowledge that you are part of the leadership team in the youth board at the Dallas Holocaust and Human Rights Museum. Many of the young people that you're hearing from today are among those student leadership boards at Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights museums all across the country. And with Charlotte's help, we've been linking up all of these efforts, because with this pandemic forcing us to work virtually, it means that we have a really good excuse to come together beyond our typical communities. And here we are today, and I'm so happy that we get to see the fruits of all of our hard work. So thank you, Savannah, so much for sharing, and thank you to the museum in Dallas as well. Max, I know you're on the line as well. Do you have a pledge to share? I'm unsure. I just want to check in with you because you are amazing as well. And you've been doing incredible work with Nick on getting Indigenous Peoples Day recognized in Pittsburgh. Max, are you with us? Okay, no worries. We had some incredible pledges. I am so proud that we were able to almost conclude this program with the voice of young people, because we are a youth-centered movement, and y'all are the next generation. But that said, we are living in our Lador moment, right? And that means from generation to generation. At a time when anti-Semitism and other hatreds are on the rise, we're also losing a number of the Holocaust survivors who made us promise never again in the first place. But we can intentionally approach this moment rather than wake up years from now and say, I wish we could have. And I'm so proud that we are able to do this work here together across generations. Lauren, I want to pass it over to you for some concluding thoughts, and then we will wrap things up for today, but it's hardly a wrap on Genocide Awareness Month, and I'll share a little bit more about that in a few moments.
Thank you, David, and thank you to all of our participants from across the country. I'm sorry we didn't get to your questions. We will find a way that the wonderful questions that were submitted will have a life in the future, and we'll be able to engage in those conversations too. Great questions. Thank you all. I mean, our peers across Holocaust and remembrance organizations, really moving to have all of you part of this program. I really want to thank the Holocaust Center staff and leadership. I always say we have the best team in Pittsburgh. No offense to other teams in Pittsburgh, but we are the best. Jackie Reese has made this program and others possible by mastering Zoom technology and security, and she put so much time into making sure that this was not going to be Zoom bombed and that everyone participating in this program would have a safe and warm experience. Jackie, thank you, thank you, thank you. The Holocaust Center will host a virtual Yom HaShoah Tuesday, April 21st at noon. We will also have programs for local leaders. I want to thank you especially to the nurses, to the doctors, one of whom was on this line tonight, and all of the people working at essential businesses to keep us in food and medication, at risk to themselves. Real heroes in our midst. Thank you, thank you. I'm humbled by your selflessness. And to the rest of us, please stay home. Please, really, stay home. If you're interested in getting involved with the Holocaust Center, we're very active on our website, on our webpage. We have Zoom programs happening throughout the month, and this will continue, I believe, beyond the month of April. And also look at our Facebook and Instagram accounts, also very active spaces for the Holocaust Center. Finally, we're able to do our work because of the generosity of our donors. And this is a difficult time for everyone. If you are at all interested in supporting the Holocaust Center, we need it. We would be grateful. It's so important at this time, as we've talked about tonight. It is a time of growing hatred and scapegoating of Jews who have historically been blamed for all kinds of epidemics and pandemics. It's also a time when Asians and Asian Americans are being blamed for this disease. And we need to speak up. We heard that over and over again today from our panelists, from our experts. We have a lot of power. There's a lot of power in an individual with a voice. And that doesn't mean that you have to save the world. It means you have to act at your level. Small things add up. Finally, David, thank you. It is a pleasure to work with you. You are now my honorary little brother. And I'm going to give you the last word.
Wow. Thank you, Lauren. I spoke at the Association of Holocaust Organizations, and I presented a good bit of the work that we do in about 45 minutes. And towards the end, I basically put up this slide that showed the startup valley of death. And once you have a feasible project, you have to get it to the other side of sustainability. And I basically told all these museum directors, if I don't get some help, then I can't continue to do this work. And Lauren was the first to come up to me and say, don't quit, keep going. We're here to help, and we're going to work together. And Lauren wasn't she might have been the first, but she wasn't the only. The folks at the Illinois Holocaust Museum, the LA Museum of the Holocaust in Dallas, I mean, so many folks came up to me and said, keep going. And that's why we are here today. And it's been such an honor to work with everyone on this project. It is certainly not a movement of me, it's a movement of we, and there's so much more for us to do and to accomplish together. And what I would share as a closing thought is just keep showing up, because that's what I've done, and I know that good things keep happening as long as I keep showing up. And now let's just keep showing up at a socially distant way. And I shared the link to our upcoming events in the chat, but it's simply togetherweremember.org/events. And just, you know, for my grandparents, I'm really proud and grateful for them. Thank you to my parents. And again, this is just the beginning of April. Our goal was to do 30 events in 30 days, and we already have over 30 events lined up on our website, and we're sure that that's going to go further and further, and we just can't wait to see you and hang out. We have virtual meditations, we have virtual performances, virtual vigils. Just keep showing up, and thank you so much for everything that you do, and thank you to our panels as well. So thank you, and let's keep up the great work, y'all. Happy Sunday.